Hello, listeners. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our virtual art healing speaker series and exhibit. My name is Maribel Rodriguez. I am the founder of Love for Immigrants. As you may know, Love for Immigrants aims to promote a narrative of immigrants where immigrants are portrayed with dignity and respect through pop-up art exhibits as well as through storytelling. And for our first online and collaborative event, we have here Jacqueline Hernandez, and we are so happy. I am so happy to have her here today. Beautiful, uplifting artist, really inspiring, does a lot of work when it comes to healing, a lot of work where it comes to identities, looking at Indigenous identities, very inspiring, uplifting. And not to mention, she's exhibited her work in more than 30 locations, different kinds of events, festivals, and exhibitions, things like that. So we're really lucky to have her here today. And the first question for Jackie will be, how would you describe yourself and your work?
Well, I always like to describe myself as someone that likes very colorful, I would like to say, because a lot of my work is very colorful and vibrant, and I like to use a lot of like bright, beautiful neon colors. And I guess you could say I'm a very colorful person inside and out. I always love enjoying like using different kinds of like aspects as far as like me being a Latina. I enjoy using those very symbolic Latin and indigenous iconic pieces that I find. I'm also like to say I'm sort of like a little bit of a researcher. I'm an educator as well. So, as an educator, it is important for me to like do the research in order to educate those who, need to know more information of some sorts. So.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And looking a little bit more about your work, I noticed one piece called The Inner Child. So I was thinking about that art piece and wondering what inspired you to create that piece and what does it mean to you?
Well, there's a lot of very deep information with this. It's actually the one over there. I have it hanging around there. It's always there to just remind me. It's called The Healing of the Inner Child. Supposedly it's supposed to be, the healing of the Latinx child. So when you look at the painting, it has a lot of like, blooming flowers and like all these like birds, and these birds resemble like different areas in Central America. I am originally I'm Salvadorian American. My parents came here to the United States during the 1970s. I think it was a time when there was a really horrible civil war going on. So I just needed to escape here to give me and my siblings a better life. So, that was a very, crazy, tough experience for them to transition from there to over here during those times. So, there's, as being like a daughter to to an immigrant, me and my siblings were the translators. So we basically learned, they learned English from us. So it was an interesting experiences that I've had. And as far as like the healing of the inner child, there's many like experiences most of us go through, especially, like us Latinos, brown and black people, what we all go through as far as like facing certain situations during our lives, as far as like experiences with social justice, and also things as far as being new to this country, helping your parents, and, just like fighting for basically your own rights to be like from who you are as far as like being a brown person. So I want to like more reflect most of especially this painting to be like healing, as in, it's, you go through these battle scars as, being an immigrant, or born to like immigrant parents, you go through these battle scars as far as like fighting for to, you know, live a good life, you know, have more knowledge as far as like how things go. And, you know, all this like this healing is going on as far as like the blooming of the flowers. Each flower represents a different country of Latin America. As far as like my country, El Salvador, we have a very famous flower called isote, flor de isote, and it's basically a yucca flower. And that yucca flower is pretty much like, basically, from my understanding, I think yucca comes from that. And the way how the flowers look, they're white and they have these like little yellow, you know, flower parts in the middle, and they're mostly drooped down. So I try to make it look like it's more like flourished out, like open. And a lot of the flowers that I've seen, I'm just like looking back, I'm sorry. So a lot of the flowers that are going on are like part of like things that I have been inspired of when I first made my last trip in El Salvador, which was back in 2017 with my husband. And I was just fully inspired by the way how, you know, like all the volcanoes and like how hot it was, the temperature, and, you know, all the like the way how the farms looked and the way how the flowers grew. And I think that it felt to me, it was like a healing experience to just go back and see exactly like where my parents like grew up, and fully understand their struggles. Because like, you know, being a Latin woman, it's just, there's struggles as far as like, you know, identity, things that you experienced from your past and stuff. And as far as my experiences, I moved a lot when I was younger. So, you know, going from an all Hispanic, Black and brown community to an all white community when I was younger, it was just a big, like, you know, culture shock for me. Cause like, I've never have lived in an experience like that. So that was like when I was probably a good 6 years old. So I take that one experience that I've been through in my life, as far as like, you know, I tried to like, you know, communicate as far as like, okay, well, I'm in a whole different situation. How can I adjust? So it was just like years of adjusting. So I think that, you know, as far as going back to this painting, I tried making it as, how do you say, comforting to the eye, as far as like making things beautiful with leaves, flowers, make it exotic, and also like giving this like tone of this child that's like on the top part. And it gives like this totemic look to it, like it's a totem pole of some sort. Totem poles are my inspiration. I love to look at totem poles. I'm also a sculptor as well. So like the way how I sculpt things, I sculpt them in this like manner of like in an orderly, symmetrical fashion. So as far as this one's like has a symmetrical tone to it, this painting. And I added, you know, as it's opening up, getting to that part, you see these masks. I apologize. I'm looking back to sort of, because I'm working on this one and working this, so I just want to make sure I'm on tact. Okay. So as far as this one, you see like a mask. This blue mask is basically the resemblance of the Aztec mask of this water god that it's an indigenous Aztec mask. Now I use that mask because like it's, you know, most masks covers faces and stuff like that. So, you know, when you're opening up in a way that, you know, you're opening up to like a lot of possibilities as far as like showing your true self, showing your vulnerability, showing all these things that, you know, just open up and in a healing manner. So that's pretty much like what this painting has, some topics that this painting has. And there's also another mask. So there's basically, you see, it reveals this face with like, you know, just kind of like these eyes. It doesn't have these eyes, but the eyes are painted in there with UV light paint. So if you were to flash one of these UV light flashlights, the one that I have here, you can see the eyes. So like, it gives like this sort of like secretive kind of like mysterious flow to it. And as it's opening up. Now the child that sits in the front on the top of the woman, or the man, I'd like to say, you see her little child opening up. So that child has facial like expressions and like features of when I was little, and also also like facial features of my husband as well. So like that's another story to go on. So you see that the mask opens up to that child, and as you can see, it is a way of that everything's blossoming open, and all these surrounding all these birds, like these parrots, there's quetzal of Guatemala, there's parakeets, and they're toucan, and most of them resemble Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, and that part of Central America, I like to say. So that's pretty much like what it shows. And then you see around the chest area, there's a heart, and this heart right here, in front of the chest, there's these like beautiful like butterfly wings that resemble a morpho butterfly. So the morpho butterfly is located in parts of Central America and Mexico, and it's connected to these to this heart right here that I painted. And the heart has this like designs in it that was inspired by this like artist, this old-time artist. It's very known in El Salvador, and I was really inspired by his work. It's very like simple but very detailed at the same time. I'll have to get back to you on the name because the name just like flung out of my mind, so I have to look for that name. I think it's Fernando Lort. That's his name, Fernando Lort. So he was known to have these like kinds of paintings that are like very simple, and there's like a village, and there's a village woman, like campesinas, like just like they have these baskets over their head, and and he basically defines history of El Salvador through his paintings. So I was so inspired by that. So that's pretty much like a very like short summary of it, because it goes even detailed. It goes even further with this painting. But I think the best way to put it is that it's a way of healing and opening up to yourself, open yourself up, and to be yourself, basically.
Wow, just thank you for sharing. You really spoke so much about vulnerability, your inspiration that you took from your parents' country, El Salvador, and so many other countries in Latin America. There's just so much there to unravel and process. Really just inspirational. My next question, a piggyback question, you mentioned being inspired also by your husband in the painting, sort of having a mix of yourself and your husband's face in the same painting. Is there anywhere else in your art where family inspires your art, in addition to what you've already expressed?
Yes, I have a sculpture that I made. I'm not sure, I think I emailed it to you, and it's a sculpture of the front of it and the back of it. And it's supposed to be called La Reina de mis Raíces, the Queen of My Roots. And you see like one face, and then you see two other faces behind there. The sculpture is not with me present. It is stored away just for protective purposes, because it's made out of ceramic. And the faces that are on that sculpture are, it is a portrait of myself, the face features of myself, my mother, and my grandmother. So it's supposed to be like a generational type of sculpture. And it does reflect a totemic vibe to it, as far as like a totem pole, because you see like different segments going on. With her face is like totally like done with like all these tribal marks. The same thing with the two other faces as well. Now these tribal marks are supposed to resemble like an indigenous tone to it. Indigenous, like African kind of like tone to it, because from my understanding, I believe my grandmother, her mother is from Honduras. But she's part of like some part of Honduras that there is like some African descent to it, which it's very mysterious, by the way. It's something that's not really spoken about, and that's something that I want to shed a lot of light to, because I'm always interested in like knowing about my background. it's pretty mysterious in that aspect, but there's still more that I have to research. And, I used both my mother and my grandmother as part of that sculpture. I have a few other artworks that I have used my father's face. I've used my sister's face. This one right here behind me, that's up there, is pretty much like some features of my sister and myself. So there's a lot of like things that have to do with like family, and I look at their features and stuff of that manner, and I use it as to like make it part of my artwork, as far as like sculpting it and painting it. And I like to use the features because, like, a lot of our features come from like different identities. That's like I'm still digging. So.
So you mentioned so much about expressing your authentic self through the healing of the Latinx child and expressing those vulnerabilities. You've mentioned how you have this beautiful sculpture where you're in family and you're expressing that. Are there other parts of your identity that you express through your work?
Other parts? Well, I mean, mostly what I have going on is like mostly the being a woman. Being able to like, especially like a lot of like, it's a very hidden indigenous identity, I like to say, because it's not, I don't like to like get into too deep into this topic, in depth into this topic, but in El Salvador, there is like the identity of being indigenous, being brown, and being Black is just kind of muted, and it's a topic where it's like, turned away a lot. But as far as these times go, I appreciate everything that's going on. It's gotten me like taken aback in the best way possible, because like, it's like, hell yeah. I am proud and brown, and also, being un indio is like, so like, badly said in the countries down there in El Salvador. Like, that's just like, mira ese indio, like, what's wrong with that? And it's things like that I feel angry about, that I feel that I want to like, I feel mostly inspired by, and I just want to like keep it going, as far as like this painting that I'm working on in the background has to do with being this like an indigenous woman, and there's a lot of like aspects like that I'm going to add in here that I'm still working on. But yeah, that's I think that's pretty much goes for me, because I'm always like, as as being a woman, I'm inspired by like what is the life of being a Latin woman, the choices that they make, the identity, even if you're like, gay, lesbian, androgynous, any of that matter, that like, I see that being like a way of inspiration of being yourself, of who you are. So.
Thank you for that. Really, we all can use a reminder of how to express authentically through our work and be a little bit more brave every day. So my next question for you is a little piggyback, because you talk a lot about your identity as a woman and how angry you felt about the indigenous cultures being seen as inferior in some countries. And so I'm wondering, were there any other problems that upset you that you try to raise awareness of through your work, or any other feelings that were difficult feelings that you try to process through your work? And I know it's a double question.
I like that. So yes, I think that, there's, as far as like where the topic goes, besides this whole pandemic situation, like I have been feeling, and I guess I have been like sort of like touching around the topic of like Black Lives Matter, because of the fact that, I know a lot of amazing like African American like artists, curators, gallery owners that I have truly been inspired by, and that right there, especially in these kind of vulnerable times as far as the pandemic goes, those are situations right there that has got me like, okay, yeah, what's wrong? Like, seriously, Black Lives Matter, I'm working on this painting right now. It's a very slow progress because I had to put a pause on my artwork due to some situations as far as me moving to another place. I'm working on this painting right now that has to do with, it's called, I was going to call it ancestral healing, this one right here. But it's going to be more like, I like to call it like a sisterly healing, because I'm going to be adding a few more facial expressions in here, like facial features, as far as like, being like, African, and indigenous, and like, how, together, from this whole COVID-19 situation, like finding like a cure, like, how these like backgrounds can like have these like healing herbs, that I have like done some research on. So like I wanted to add, it's like ever changing, this painting right here, because I'm always like, there's always like a situation that happens and I'm just like, well, this is a huge painting, so I'm going to keep adding more and more to it. So like, I think as an artist, like in my aspect, like I guess I like to say I'm self-paced. And when it comes to like a social issue of some sort, of something of that matter, I tend to like take it, do the right research, make sure, it comes out correctly, and I display it on my paintings. This one right here is a 48 by 48 painting. It's pretty big for me. It's too big for my car, actually. So I want to add as much information, like it's information overload, because I think that's the kind of person I am, like information overload. Like when you look at one of my paintings, it's like a lot going on. So, there's always like some sort of like a story. So for this one, for example, this is something that I'm tackling, the issues as far as like, Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter, and, as far as like, it kind of like gets to me, how like probably about a month ago, where I found out that Latinos and African Americans are the ones that are getting hit by this COVID situation. And I'm just like, how? Like, and it kind of hurts me, just to see that and like listen to that. And then I guess, like, let me just move a bit. Like I made it into like a thing that I added lungs there because, obviously this whole, like this virus right here obviously attacks the lungs first. And there's like, it's surrounded by all these like herbs that are healing herbs, I like to say. And listening to that, it makes me like, wow, we need to be stronger. Like we have to be stronger, as far as I know, as far as like the brown and Black community. And, I like to tap a little bit more into the more vulnerable side. Like I had an uncle that passed away, and he came to this country like a few years ago due to COVID. So it pretty much like gave like a sort of like a deep impact in me, because like I wasn't too close to my uncle, but we had a connection somehow. And just hearing that about, how it affects the brown and Black community, and it just like, wow. And I think I'm circulating around that pretty much.
Thank you for being vulnerable. I know it's a difficult time. I can't imagine how it is to lose somebody because of COVID. And I know some of our listeners might also be in a similar boat where they've lost someone they love due to COVID, or they've lost someone they love due to so many other social issues going on, like the ones you've mentioned. And so I really appreciate you opening up with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I remember you speak also about the healing herbs in your work. And since this is an art healing theme, it's a really interesting part to explore because there's always that idea in, I think, a lot of our Latinx communities and many other communities where healing herbs are so important. If you get sick, oh, I made this home remedy for you before you go to the doctor and stuff like that. Can you discuss a little bit more about how culture has inspired your notion of healing and if art has inspired your notion of healing or culture inspired art, one of those.
Okay. Well, as far as like art and healing goes, I believe that I'm a firm believer of art therapy. I know a few people who are art therapists, and I'm fascinated by the things that they teach me, as far as I know. And I feel that, the number one thing when we think about art is self-expression. It's a way of like expressing yourself, and and it's not just drawing on a piece of paper. Like, look what I did. I tell my students that it's not just drawing a piece of paper, but it's a way of like, expressing how you feel, the experience and the moments that you go through. And also it's a way of like, speaking out to the crowd, making how do you say making how do you say making that statement, making a statement that is strong enough for people to see that maybe some people will get offended, maybe some people will not. And I feel that that's a way of healing. I could say that sometimes I'm not very vocal about the way how I feel. So like, I feel that I'm stronger when it comes to like expressing myself through my paintings and my sculptures. In a way of healing, I'm making something. The act of like, your hands, you're using your hands to create like this object or paint on this piece, that you're not just using only your hand, but you're thinking at the same time. You're using your fine motor skills, but you're also using your brain in order to like imagine that thing that you want to like just open and let out. So that's why I think that's the number one thing of why I am an art teacher, because I love to see what my students make, and I like to see what they make. I like to see what they're thinking about and how they're expressing themselves. So as far as like healing goes, like the way I see healing through my work is, I love to paint, and, especially, I mean, at this point, I put a pause to my artwork for now because of certain situations that I'm kind of like going through as far as like moving and like things of that matter. But when I get back to that artwork, it feels like, oh my gosh, it's like riding a bicycle again. Like I feel so good. Like, for example, like today, I finally find time today, besides all this moving that I'm doing, I get to, work on this painting, and I'm gonna like, I keep thinking and thinking. And my thing is, I feel good when I paint. It feels good. It feels like, it's like a cure for me. It's a must. Even, I kind of like have like kind of bad arthritis. I feel like an old lady, but it's not that bad. It's mild. But even when my hand is hurting, I still need to paint. As far as like, I just work through the pain, like, because it's a must for me as an artist. And I always like to how do you say plan. So, it's always important for me to plan my work before I really execute it. So for it to make sense. I think that's my little secret of being an artist. I like to plan first. Some artists don't. Some artists just go for it. They just like, or they've been thinking about it and they just go for it. But I like to plan my work before I really like paint away and all that stuff. And I've been teaching painting for a few years now, and I think that I started off like with being a paint and sip instructor, and I actually had a lot of fun. And the cool thing about that, during the little part-time gig that I had a while back, was that I was able to see people tell me I can't draw for the life of me. I only draw stick figures. And I'm just like, okay, well, you will see at the end of this class. And you know what? Even now as a teacher, I see my students tell me the same thing. But at the end of the session, they made a work of art that they couldn't believe they made. Even during the time that when I was being a paint and sip instructor, they made like a whole work of art, and they feel good about themselves. I made this, like, wow, I can't believe I painted this and I followed your steps. Now, not saying I like to be very humble about me being an instructor. I guess I'm an okay instructor, but I'm happy to know that, these people, these students at the time and these students now are able to like create something and feel good about it. Even when they're like having like a horrible day, or even if they're feeling some type of way, they're still able to like express themselves through their artwork. So I think that self-expression is a big deal for me.
So I want to ask you this question, which is, what is your favorite song and why is it your favorite song?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I love music in general. I listen to all kinds of genres, from like old school hip hop to now to rap to rock to old school rock to any kind of thing, from flamenco music to a good cumbia to a good merengue to all that. So I think that as of right now, I'll tell you what's my favorite song. It's by the Black Eyed Peas. It's called "The News Today." It gets to me every time I hear that song. It's really new. I think they came out with their new album now, I think like about a few weeks ago, or maybe last month. I could be wrong. And that song, it's pretty deep because like it talks about like, oh, did you hear the news today? Like 1,000 people have passed away. So I think that just hearing that statement, just like, wow, it's like reality hits, and it just talks about like this pandemic and about all the issues that's going on right now, as far as like, the term "I can't breathe." And there's a part in the song that says, "You can't breathe." Well, that's pretty funny how we all can't breathe. And it talks about, what happened to this guy that passed away when he yelled out, "I can't breathe." George Floyd, there you go, that's the name. George Floyd, when he yelled out, "I can't breathe." So it's just, I enjoy this song very much because it tackles on the issues of what's going on. And yeah, I think that's the number one song that I've been sort of like replaying. But yeah, it's pretty much.
Great. So, there's a piggyback question to this one. I think you might have answered it earlier, but the piggyback is, what art piece of yours gives you a similar experience to that favorite song of yours?
This one right now. This painting that I'm working on, that I have been on and off, it's pretty much, I'm trying to like tackle the issues with this painting of all that's been going on. Just trying to like, as far as like this pandemic and the issues of like BLM. I want to add it to this painting that I am working on right now. And I'm really hoping to finish it at least by the end of this month or next month, because I had put a pause on like some of my artwork, like I said earlier, because of some things of like moving and stuff like that. But plus I needed a break. So I just needed to reflect a little bit about some things that I think reflection is very important for an artist, like putting a stop and putting a pause and just thinking of what's the next thing that I want to do. So yeah, this painting that I'm working on, which is about 70% done. And I'm going to continue tackling those issues as far as like with my artwork, because I'm still going to keep going, showing more work of those topics actually, because I think it's something that we need to raise more awareness as time goes, and raise keep it going, actually.
What legacy do you want to leave behind in your work?
I believe the kind of legacy that I would love to leave is the way how I aesthetically add the details on my work, because I like to be known as the artist that has a lot going on with their paintings. I'm always throwing in like all these different features and like all these different faces and all these flowers, and there's always a purpose for what my artwork resembles. You know, it's, you see a painting, it's like, oh, I see a face and there's 3 other faces and what's going on, like. And I always want to leave my audience always thinking, just like an educator, you got to critically think when you look at something, and just why is it there and how, you know, and all those questions that raise upon my audience that I want to do. So I think this legacy I want to do is just I always love working with a lot of detail, and I always want to be that one artist that has a lot of colors and details in their work, and a lot of like thought process of how the person will perceive it, how will the audience perceive it, like how will the person that's looking at the artwork like think about what's going on here and why is this happening. And my other thing is I always want to leave a legacy as, you know, of the awareness that I'm trying to raise here, of like being a brown person, being a brown woman, and also like reflecting on all the social issues of what should be important right now. So, and one last thing is also that I always want to make sure that my artwork has this sort of like a healing vibe to it. I want to give off healing vibes, because I know like every artist has their way of like showing what they're expressing, showing their statement. And I guess I guess it's not the right word, but I want to leave those healing vibes. Like when you're looking at my work, I want, wow, this feels like there's growth going on. There's this sort of like opening up going on. So I think that's pretty much it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Jackie. That was so inspiring. We are so glad to have you here today and speak so thoroughly about your work and about your experiences as a teacher, as an artist, and in your own process of healing. I want to give a quick shout out before we close out to my friend Carlos. Carlos is the person who recommended Jackie for this talk. And he
very cool guy.
He is. Mm-hmm. And he has a really cool page on Instagram called Cool Art with Carlos. Yes. So that's another fun spot to visit. You can find more of Jackie's work on our website. You can also visit her work, send her an email if you want to purchase work or simply be inspired. Another short shout out is to an artist named Micaela Anaya. She's the artist who created this lovely painting right beside me.
Beautiful.
And her name is Dolores.
Awesome. Beautiful. Beautiful work.
So lovely. Thank you.
Yes.
So lovely to have you here. Really.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate this interview. And it's nice and refreshing to speak about my work to you. And I appreciate the questions that you have provided. So thank you.
All right, everyone. This was Jackie Hernandez with her beautiful work. I hope you continue to enjoy the rest of the speakers today and have a healing journey.
Thank you. Bye-bye.